Servus Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. Mr. Söder, the governor of Bavaria, wants to declare a state of emergency once again in Bavaria, in the southeast of Germany. He justifies this drastic step with the presence of a not at all uncommon virus here in the wintertime, in the cold season in Central Europe. And according to his professional opinion, the numbers are still too high and the numbers must go down. In my opinion, this clearly shows the penalty for a society when they elect scientifically illiterate people into positions of power. It is very clear that our politicians and our leadership, they either have ulterior motives and they're lying to the people, or they're just not intellectually capable to interpret these numbers in a reasonable and meaningful way. In this brief presentation, I want to tell you what Mr. Söder has cooked up now and how he justifies that. But before that, let me thank all my supporters and my subscribers once again. If you like these presentations, like, share and subscribe, and if you want to support my channel, please do so via PayPal or via Patreon or Subscribestar. You can find the links down in the description box below. Okay, so what did Mr. Söder declare during the press conference this afternoon in Bavaria? He said that starting from Wednesday, already in 3 days, people in Bavaria are not allowed to leave their homes unless they have a good reason, and they will be stopped by police and they will have to declare why they are on the street, where they come from and where they are going, and they might also have to present some kind of a document or some kind of evidence for why they are leaving the house. As I said, many people who are on their way to work, they have to show some kind of a document that they are employed and that they are on the way to work, like a corporate ID card or something like that. The only valid reason in Bavaria to leave your house is, for example, if you are a child and you go to school, if you are a student and you go to university, if you are a worker and you go to work, or if you buy food. You are also allowed to take a walk or go jogging, as also was the case earlier this year in March. Oh yeah, and you're allowed to go to the doctor. Very funny actually. But this is not everything, of course. If you know Mr. Söder, you know that he doesn't leave it at that. No. He is a deep thinker, so he goes deep. These very general rules are of course not enough. He goes into the details. Not only does he want to tell people to stay at home, he wants to take away every reason that people might have for leaving the house in the first place. So for example, the consumption of alcohol under the open sky will not be allowed anymore. And that means of course Glühwein, hot wine, spiced wine at Christmas markets. I don't know if it will be okay if you open an umbrella and drink, because technically you're not under the free open sky then. I have no idea. And by the way, Mr. Söder had the full support of the Green Party and also of the Freien Wähler, that is the free voters. That is a party that exists in some states and they are liberals or conservatives or something in the middle. They are centrists basically that don't want to belong to the CDU, but they are pretty much CDU-like. So what do the other parties say about that? So the SPD said that these blanket lockdowns don't make any sense. Instead, every citizen should wear a mask. The Liberal Party demanded that there are mass quick tests in certain hotspot areas. And the AfD said that not the virus is out of control, but the Bavarian government is out of control. The local head of the police union said that he sees problems enforcing these laws, especially when it comes to the celebrations around New Year's Eve. He said that people already expected that they are allowed to celebrate in groups of 10 people. And now in Bavaria, they are not allowed to celebrate anymore after this declaration of Mr. Söder. So the authorities expect trouble on the streets by New Year's Eve, and maybe before that already. He said that the officers are already under a lot of stress and it becomes harder and harder to maintain order on the streets of Bavaria. He goes on to say that also for police officers, Christmas is normally vacation time. They have families too. And after this chaotic year with a lot of extra stress and extra work for police officers, they were also looking forward to some time off around Christmas and New Year. He openly says that they probably will not be able to increase the frequency or the intensity of street controls and patrolling on the street in Bavaria. He also expects that there will be an increased number of calls from concerned citizens and concerned neighbors. And the police, of course, has to respond to all of these calls, if you know what I mean. Alright, so I think I would side with the AfD when they say not this virus is out of control, but the Bavarian government is. That sums up nicely what is going on here. What we see here is nothing out of the ordinary. It is called winter in Central Europe. For anybody who doesn't know already, I want to remind you once again that in 2018, the regular old flu, the influenza virus, killed 20,000 people in Germany. In the early year of 2018, around calendar week 10, that was 8,000 a week, which is more than 1,100 a day. And there wasn't a single article in the newspaper, there wasn't a lockdown, there was nothing. So don't tell me anything about the numbers need to go down, the numbers. Here you can see the latest figures from Germany, and we have now between 300 and 400 a day. So yeah, that is 30 to 40% of what the regular good old flu did in 2018, when nobody was giving a rat's behind about that. And this data comes directly from the Robert Koch Institute, which is the official state authority in Germany for these matters. There are many people now in Germany and all over the world actually who have a reflex to deny the existence of this virus or something like that. While it is understandable to a certain degree, I think it is foolish. I think the evidence is definitely there. But if you look at the official numbers that match nicely with what we see from excess mortality data from many countries, and I think excess mortality data is rock solid data that is almost impossible to fake. Excess mortality is the way to determine how many people were killed by influenza, and it is also the way to determine how many victims the China bug has produced. And by the way, as a scientist, I am very interested in fraud, of course. Many scientific journal publications are fake, data is made up, and things that were never measured in a lab are just published. Data is faked on a daily basis in the world of science. So I am very interested in these things. So if you have any idea how to fake hundreds of thousands of death certificates or excess mortality data, please let me know. I'm very interested in that. My line of argumentation has always been that compared to a seasonal flu, which is normal for Central Europe, it periodically occurs almost every year during the cold season, and of course the victims are people who are extremely old and or extremely weak. It is people who are around the age of the statistical life expectancy or even far beyond that. It is people who just had surgery or who are having cancer or heart disease or something like that. People whose immune system is in really bad shape, and this has been the case in Central Europe and also other places in the world, of course, for millennia already. To me, it almost looks like that these people in 2020 started to complain that the sun rises in the morning or that it gets cold in winter. Or what comes next? Maybe they start crying and they complain on Twitter that they got all wet when they were taking a shower. What we see now is normal. It is just a different virus this year, but everything else is as is to be expected in Europe. The group of people that dies is exactly the same demographic that would normally die from a normal influenza, and it is actually less people than in 2018, where nobody cared about it. So yes, I think the AfD hit the nail on the head. Our government is completely out of control. They are absolutely unable to interpret these numbers, and they're just looking at numbers they don't understand, and they say these numbers must go down. The result is government overreach and massive abuse of power. that results in massive economic damage and an extreme burden on the families here, on our society at large actually. So in turn, more and more people become really unsatisfied with that. The only people who are still in favor of all of these government measures are people who work in the public sector anyway, who are taken care of by other people's tax payment and who don't have to produce anything of value and who are not held to objective standards, but they live in their ivory tower dream world where money magically appears in their bank account every month without them having to do anything. They can just sit at home and they get paid anyway. While they complain on social media about these stupid uneducated plebs who want to go to work or save their businesses. Isn't that ridiculous? Why doesn't everyone just work for the government? Alright, so I have received some requests to explain a little better who this Mr. Söder actually is, where he comes from and why he behaves like that. Because he seems to be sticking out among the politicians in Germany as the one who always feels the need to one-up everybody else in terms of how strict the measures and restrictions should be. In fact, I think this is the political persona that he chooses for himself. He wants to play the role of Mr. Tough. Mr. Lockdown, Mr. Law and Order, Mr. Do you have a license for that? His plan is of course to be the next chancellor candidate, but more about this in an upcoming video that I'm researching now about Mr. Söder, the totalitarian governor of Bavaria. Enjoy the rest of your day. Servus, Kameraden!